We're going to call this Chapter 2. What is this all about? In a nutshell, we're sitting around our offices, and this is what happens to me. You know, I've been in this business for you for 25 years, and so I've had the honor of seeing you move up in the world. I've seen you become chiefs, and I see you when you're no longer chief. And it's a real honor. It's a real honor to do that and to watch and to see this room constantly changing like this. The hard part has always been when you would give me a call and you would say, you know, I'm thinking of retiring. And I'd say, yeah. And they said, I'm trying to decide what I want to do. And I'd say, well, what do you think? They said, well, I think I'll do some consulting. And I'd say, have you done any consulting? They said, no. I said, oh, okay. And they say, I think I'll do some teaching. And they say, well, have you done any teaching? And they say, no. And then they say, well, I think I'm going to start a business. And I say, well, have you ever run a business? And they say, no. Or they say, I'm so upset with the union. I've had it. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. And every time people would call me like this, I'd always feel completely useless because I wouldn't know what to say. Because what do you say to people? Every day they get up for 30 years and they go to work and they do their job and they work, and they work weekends and they get phone calls and they get all of this stuff and they have people working for them and so forth. And they have these great careers. They're driven. They like what they do, and they're good at it. So it occurred to me that what's happened in the world and what's happened in policing is if you start your job, if you start your career, say, in your 20s, by the time you're somewhere in your 50s, you've already put 30 or some odd years in. So someone leaving in their 50s, if you will, they could have 15 or 20 more years to do something. And when you've done what you've done and you've been so good at it, even stress is addictive. Even stress is addictive. Chuck Ramsey, I'll tell you about the project, he would say, last day in Philadelphia, Richie, he would say he went to a murder scene and there was the yellow tape, and he stepped over the yellow tape and he went into the murder scene. And he thought to himself, on his last day as police commissioner of Philadelphia, damn, I'm never going to be able to do this again. So even a horrible thing like a murder and so forth, he was in the game. He was on the inside. And now, so there's this 15, 20 years, the fourth quarter, if you were playing football. And as you know, the fourth quarter in football is really important. But yet there's been no study, there's no playbook for those phone calls that I'd get. I'd be completely useless. I'd say, you know, people want to teach, they want to start a business, they want to be a police chief somewhere else, they want to be an interim police chief. So what we decided to do was we said, let's ask the people who are out there now. If there was one word we picked up, it was the sense of wanting to be relevant, to continue to be relevant, to continue to do something. And there's no, I want to make this clear, there is no one model. This book is more about like a menu, something you can look at and you can say, well, here's what this person did, here's what this person did. Because, you know, for example, Doug Gillespie, who's not here, he would retire in his 50s as sheriff in Las Vegas, and he'd be very happy. He didn't want to have any more to do really with policing per se. So he has a place in New Jersey, he has a place in Las Vegas, and he's very happy. And that's one model. Or you could take Ellen Hansen, who would go on to be a CEO of an animal shelter. Or Terry Hillard, who would meet a Secret Service agent in Chicago. The two of them knew nothing about business, put $1,000 into it. Their first client was Oprah Winfrey, and they got her on board, and then they got some other clients. They would sell that company a couple of years ago for like $10, $20 million. So much of this is about finding what's right for you. One of the tougher, more interesting parts of it was what happens to people's personal relationships, their family relationships. Very difficult, because let's face it, many of you work all the time, and I don't know if Tom Manger is in the room, but you know how people say, you know, when they leave or they get fired or whatever, they say, I want to spend more time, you know, with my family. Well, Tom Manger, when he left Montgomery County, he says, I'm not sure my family wants to spend more time with me, you know. So, but what was interesting is that dynamic would change. And maybe one was still working and one wasn't working. And like in Doug Gillespie's case, what he said, he talked to his wife, and so they both retired. But for some people who've been busy all the time, suddenly having all that time to themselves, and so those relationships change. Kathy O'Toole has a great husband, Dan. I know, I worked in the Boston Police Department. And she's very lucky to have Dan. We interviewed Kathy and we asked her, you know, what was it like? And she said, I had a great person to support me. And then other people like Peter Fahey in England said it was a real awakening with his wife and just having to manage that, suddenly being around so much. For some people, it's fantastic. They've been looking for this, but for other people who are used to working all the time, this is kind of something they have to work out. And sometimes you have to get used to doing things on your own. You have to be, one thing if we were telling people, you have to become more self-sufficient. Darrell Stevens is a good example of that. When he did that, learning to use the computer, learning to use technology, making your own arrangements. I asked Jimmy O'Neill about this. He says, that's why I try not to get too dependent on people, so I'll know, you know, that. But for some people, they become, and so if you're thinking about consulting or traveling or all of those things, learning to do those things way ahead of time is really important. So, let me give you the 10 things that I've learned over my 25 years that I think are important in this whole business. Number one, decisions on Chapter 2 are highly personal. What one person does doesn't mean you're going to do the same thing. Take the Doug Gillespie model, right? He's very happy. I've tried to get him back, come do this. He's traveling the country. Sid Klein, Clearwater, right? Everybody thought that Sid Klein would want to continue working. He was a workaholic. He got out there, traveling, right? He's very happy. So everything is very personal. So this book, which you will get, gives you a menu of ideas. Number 2, James. Think twice about leaving your job until you have a plan for what's next. So too many people will leave their job and say, I'm going to decide what I want to do. You are much more marketable while you have a job than when you're out. Number 3, finding relevance is what you do is more important than making money. So many people, we would talk to them and they'd say, I'm getting paid a lot, but I really don't like it. John Timoney, when he left Philadelphia, he went to work for Bo Dietl, and he hated it. He's like getting paid a lot of money, but he wasn't in the game. He didn't like what he was doing. Money is not a good motivator. Now, does that mean it's not important? No. And for some people, it's more important than others. Number 4, don't wait until after you retire to decide what you want to do next. Well, people say, I'm going to retire, and then I'm going to think what I want to do. You've lost a lot of bargaining power, a lot of options. On the other hand, sometimes you see, and you'll get to this, the writing on the wall, and you want to get ahead of it. Number 5, handwriting on the wall. What does that mean? Well, what Charlotte Lansinger and I talk about is when you get into a department, first of all, no one should take a job without a severance agreement. No one should take a job, and all it has to be, it could be something like this. It could be, doesn't cost a thing. You say, look, at some point things may not work out. All I ask is that you give me 6 months in which I can look for another job and get that job while I'm still employed. Because once you are pushed out, it's really difficult. And those are the hardest phone calls. I've gotten phone calls from police chiefs at 8 o'clock in the morning. Their email has been cut off. Their cell phone has been cut off. That's it. Don't criticize your predecessor or your successor. I see people come into the job all the time. You know, this guy before me, he did nothing. It was ridiculous. I had to fix everything. Or when they leave, they're still criticizing the person who took their job. Let it go. Let it go. Number 7, chapter decisions will impact your personal life. And that's what I was talking about before, is to have this conversation, wife, spouse, significant other, partner, whatever. You know, kind of talk about it. Now, I'll give you an example with me. People say, my God, you know, you're always traveling. Your wife must be a basket case. I said, she's thrilled not to have me in the house. Trust me. So for some people, when they come home, say, hey, here I am. We can spend a lot of time together. Really? I got my friends. So I tell people, don't change your life dramatically. Or at least talk to someone about that. Number 8, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. What do I mean by that? People say, you know, when I get out, I'm going to play golf every day. I say, really? Yeah, I love golf. They play golf. They play golf. After about the 5th time of playing golf, it gets old. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Number 9, being really busy is better than having too much time on your hands. Now that may not be true for everybody, but I think I know you, many of you, and I think you're used to being busy. You know, what do you say? If you want to get something done, find a busy person. So to me, you know, having a bunch of time on your hands isn't necessarily a good thing. Does that mean you have to work as hard as you have? No, but I see people, they belong to boards, they do some consulting, they do some travel with their family. They find some combination of those things. And then finally, number 10, stay engaged, stay active, stay busy. I think when I look at people and I see how they've done in life, I think if they're still active, if they're still engaged, maybe not at the same level, it sort of keeps them focused. And here's the book. Thank you very much.